Hello and welcome, Exiles, to my Leaguestarter guide for Energy Blade Inquisitor, doing a Sanctum rush into transitioning to a Hexblast Mines Tri-Stack Inquisitor using Hexblast of Contradiction. Now let's get into it. To start off with, I have a leveling POB that follows a tree that's basically set up for generic Firecaster leveling. You can do Armageddon Brand plus Cremation. That's pretty tryhard, requires a lot of sockets. You could go just Firestorm, and that's what I did for my leveling run. Or you could do a combination of Firestorm with Armageddon Brand. Whatever you want to do, whatever you feel comfortable with, this is set up for Armor Brand leveling. Now, the key difference here between last league and what we have now is basically the Dark Arts cluster. This one right here used to be over here. It got moved. And basically, this is probably a time loss for Templar. For me personally, it's somewhere in the range of 10 to 20 time losses for my leveling. Like, for example, I could do a 4.5 hour. This maybe makes it more likely that I do a 4.5 to a 5 hour run. Not having Dark Arts, you lose some cast speed, and you lose the ability to grab the Mastery that gives 60% damage, while you have two separate or different weapons, basically a sword and an axe, for example. The upside of this is you're not necessarily forced to do dual wield. You could do a shield for a bit more defensive. You could go into shield charge if you want. That's up to you. I believe Leap Slam is faster for leveling, but you can make up your own choices. I'm not going to tell you how to level, but Leap Slam is what I recommend, but you can do whatever you want. All right, so this is basically what the tree looks like. We level up, the idea is all the way to level 68. So in game, I have a character right now. This is a level 68 character, and I did basically an SSF start where I played for roughly about 5 hours and 13 minutes. That's what the live split timer is if you check the VODs for how long it took me to get here. And in this setup, I got 16 chaos and a bunch of miscellaneous currency, which, for example, the Jeweler Orb will use to 4-socket our Khaleesi's Grace, and then we'll use a few extra Jewel Orbs and some fusings to link them. Obviously, we'll use that to set up our other sockets as well. The idea is basically we need a bit of raw chaos to buy the specific League Start uniques I recommend. And so how did I get 16 chaos when going to level 68? It's pretty simple. The only thing you really need to do is every single time you level, once you get to like level 60 and onward, every single time you level, you go to the Heist vendor shop and you buy demolition contracts. Specifically, the reason for doing this is the low level contracts for demolition, they have these question mark rooms. You'd go through and you'd buy whatever. You buy these demolition contracts. I'll step inside real quick just so I can show you what they look like. And you look for the question mark side rooms. The question mark side rooms give you chaos orbs, 1 to 2 to even 3 very regularly. I would estimate somewhere between 5 and 10 demolition contracts should get you enough currency to buy the recommended items to get you to swap into the setup that will be able to crush the early Sanctum without too much trouble. So you see if I look through this area, this zone here, those guys attacking me. I was just trying to show you the mini map, but we're getting aggroed by people. I guess that's cool. Just want to show the mini map. Could you go away? Anyways. The mini-map here, you'll see these question mark boxes on the side. They have a very high likelihood to give chaos orbs. I don't know if it's like 70, 80%, but a lot of times you get 1, 2, even 3 chaos orbs from these side chests. You will want to complete the whole heist run at least a few times just to make sure your rogue markers stay above the necessary limit to afford to hire Tibs every time you go in here. But that's the idea. From level 60 to 68, you're going to be doing a combination of just leveling in a zone. Like, for example, I would recommend Act 9 Foothills, very high density, a lot of blue packs. You could level here to 68, but while you level, go back and do your heist contracts, get your demo contracts, and get a decent amount of chaos. And basically just buy the various pieces you need as you go through that. For example, you'll notice this buy list is full of a bunch of initial items. I put all the early items you need at the top, and items you need as you get more min-maxed into the build lower down. That's generally how the list works. I might have forgotten 1 or 2 items, but I try to get everything on the trade search. So the idea is, as you get this chaos, you could click Malachi Simula, and you could go buy this helmet. This helmet on Leaguestarter is generally a 1 alch to 1 chaos helmet. And Lori's Lantern, another example of a 1 chaos item. Carnage Heart, another 1 chaos item. Basically, the general picture is, I have some very cheap, easy uniques you can get early on that will do well for you. And the idea is you need around 10 to 15 chaos roughly. So that's why you're doing the demo contracts. You just get some initial chaos. You can do chaos recipe if you like to do that. I just like to pick up the raw chaos doing the demo contracts, and that's what works for me. Now, once you have yourself the gear set up, it should look a little bit like this. I have a character set up in standard, which we will give a little demonstration for. This character is level 76. I have, I believe, 9 passives unspec'd, or 8 passives unspec'd, as you can see on the tree here. What I am demonstrating here is a level 68 character. And you'll notice on my tree, I have this 15 cold res spec. This is just simulating the 15 Ellie res I'm going to get from Alira, which I can't go back and properly spec for because Alira isn't in the game as just a 1 passive node for right now. So that's basically what's capping our res, and that's why this node is clicked currently on this POB. In the POB node section, that is not there, but that's why it's on this character you see right in front of you. Anyways, the cheap uniques you want to buy: Malachi Simula, Carnage Heart, Alori's Lantern, a Ghost Wraith, a Rare Ring, Rare Shield, Rare Belt, Palm's Roots, and Khaleesi's Grace, and then just a random vendor sword that you can leap slam around with. That has 2 greens and 1 red is all you really need for your energy blade slot. Now the way this works is there's key reasons I'm using some of these items. For one, Calm's Heart is very important if you're using a Ghost Wraith build. Your stun mitigation is very bad. Your stun threshold is based on a 2k life pool. This character is not set up defensively. This solves stun in the Sanctum, so we don't get stuck somewhere and take a bunch of hits and lose a bunch of resolve, and that's why we have this. It's okay though, because our movement skill in the Sanctum is specifically set up to be leap slam, and this generally ends up being fairly fast or fast enough. Even though these boots have no movement speed, it solves that one problem. The rest of the stuff here is basically Ghost Wraith is how you push a decent ES number very early on, you know, 5,000 ES, and then Energy Blade turns it into 3k. That is pushing a decent ES number early on, and it comes with Chaos Res, which allows us to get to 72 Chaos Res. Now, that's not the only reason we're getting close to Chaos Res cap. The key thing I want you to notice is when I use slash passives, you'll notice we only have 22. Normally you get 24, and the 2 I'm missing is from killing Kitava. When I recommend this league start, it's all about waiting to kill Kitava until you've done a bunch of Sanctums. You don't have to kill Kitava to do Sanctums, and Sanctum has a bit of chaos damage. And early on, when you're so fragile in terms of gearing, you don't have much res on your gear, it's just nice to save the 2 points and have the extra 30 chaos res, 30 Ellie res. It's generally more valuable at that point. And so that's what I recommend for you to do. If you have, for whatever reason, you high rolled some rares while you were leveling, you are going to be chaos res capped after killing Kitava, you can go ahead and kill him and have the extra 2 passives, but that's up to you. You should obviously go through the rest of the campaign besides Kitava. You need to get your Merc Lab and the rest of the passives in Act 10. But that's the idea. So, if I made this clear, you are starting as a fire-based leveler. You are going through until about level 60 like normally. Then you start buying demo contracts to get Chaos Orbs, as well as you need to get your Merc Lab and get the rest of Act 10 before Kitava done. Once you have done that, you have a level 68 character. Okay, my character is 76, but I have 8 passives unspec'd. I am trying to simulate the scenario where we're level 68, but this is the only character I had in standard that was close to the right level. We have a bit of extra flat life because of it. I think each level gives you 6 flat life or 12. Don't quote me on that. I think it's 6. It's a little bit of extra flat life, but it doesn't make the difference of whether or not this character works or doesn't work. Before I got to this video, I tested this character on a level 74 Sanctum. Your quest Sanctum you get is going to be a level 68 Sanctum. It is much, much easier, and the difference in that 40 life is not going to matter at all, especially when you're fighting enemies that have much lower HP. I should also say that once you get Chaos Orbs from your first Sanctum's also going to level you up a decent amount, but the first Chaos Orbs are going to just catapult your gear upgrades. It's one of those things where Sanctum is good early because Chaos is king, and it gives a lot of Chaos, and it gives a lot of Divine Orbs, and it's just a very big punch straight into making money, whereas no other mapping strategies, you're not making money right away. So you want to snowball your advantage of currency and just upgrade, upgrade, upgrade. And by the time you've played 10 hours, you have way better gear than the guy that went to do maps and basically is in poverty, because initially in maps, you don't really make that much currency. There's not much generation of currency. It's mostly just trying to push to the next tier, if that makes sense. Now, let's get into a showcase of what it looks like to do a low tier Sanctum character. One thing I should add outside of the leveling to 68, Merc Lab, all that stuff, one thing I will say you should do with your currency that I didn't mention yet is buy Penance Brand of Dissipation. This is a skill I'm going to recommend. You can do early Sanctum with a Firestorm or another skill, like for example, if you want to do Frostbolt Ice Nova, that would work fine. It would be very strong. You could do whatever you want. This is the one I recommend. And if you're worried about buying Penance Brand early, I'm going to try to explain why you never need to worry about a league start Transfigured gem. And it's basically because there's a ton of people all league starting the same time you are. And in the Merc lab, or not the Merc lab, the normal lab and the cruel lab, the best option is basically always to transfigure a gem. So the way you got to picture it is you have 100 people going to Merc lab. 1, 2, maybe 3 of them want to use Penance Brand of Dissipation. The other 97 don't. And there's a good chance the other 97 are going to make this gem because they're going to do Transfigured gem. They're going to see Penance Brand of Dissipation pop up. Pretty well-known, good gem. And they're going to pick it up and they're going to sell it to you for 3 chaos. And when they do that, you are going to do a Transfigured gem option and you're going to get something else that's valuable. Maybe you get Lancing Steel Sprain. Maybe you get Frostbolt of Ice Nova. There's a lot of valuable gems for a lot of different builds. Holy Relic of Conviction. Don't quote me on that one. The point is, there's a lot of gems that other people want. And when you transfigure that gem, you can then sell that to the other players. The idea is it'll be very cheap on day 1, 2, 3C at tops, because number 1, people don't have the money to spend more than that. And there's a very large supply of them in the market. But anyways, Penance Brand of Dissipation, best skill early on for early Sanctum. I'll give a little quick demonstration here. I have a Sanctum with gain 15 resolve on kill. When you kill a boss, not particularly valuable, but this is just showcasing early Sanctum. You get a quest reward, what it looks like. The general gameplay is put 2 brands on enemy, jump around. That's all it is. Put brand on enemy, jump around. It's pretty simple. The thing is, though, if you're going to do a Sanctum League start, I would say, you want to make sure that you have some level of familiarity with mechanics. I wouldn't recommend just going in blind, for example, because your character is not going to be particularly... It's not going to be forgiving if you click bad afflictions. So even though this character is set up for Sanctum to be very easy, you will kill enemies fast, all you need to do is jump around, it does take some level of knowledge of what afflictions to not click, because there are some that could brick your run even if you have a good character. And so I would caution you, if you're going to play this, at least do a practice run or 2 so you have some familiarity with the mechanics. That will very much matter, because the strategy is contingent on completing your first Sanctum. The first Sanctum is what catapults you into, number 1, buying your second Sanctum, number 2, buying upgrades so you continue to steamroll the harder and harder Sanctums and get more and more currency. Now, if you're wondering, Sanctums, are they affordable early league? Yes, they are. The way it works is not many people start Sanctum. Very few builds have the damage to do Sanctum early. And that ends up meaning very few people do Sanctum early. But the thing is, everybody drops them. They are a random drop that occurs. You can drop them in a level 1 map. You can drop them in a T17 map. The point is, say there's 5% of the player base that's rushing Sanctum. It's me, you, 3 other guys, and 95 other players are going into maps. 95 other players are going to complete on average, I don't know, 5, maybe 10 maps per 1 Sanctum we do. During that time frame, they're going to drop Sanctums. Generally, there is more supply and generation of Sanctums coming into the economy than the Sanctum players can consume. Unless there's like some huge, massive meta shift, and 20% of the player base copies my build or some other Sanctum rush strategy. Sanctums, you will buy the next one with your currency you got from your first Sanctum. They cannot sell for that much because there's just too much competition out there, and you will be printing money hand over fist. And I'd recommend every single time you complete a run, look at upgrades you can make to your character. For example, one of the first upgrades I like to go for is always just swapping from Carnage Heart to Astramentus, stuff like that, better rares. All of it goes a long way of making you steamroll the Sanctum faster and faster. Last league, in about 10 hours time, I was doing level 83 Sanctums with a character that had gear very similar to this, except I had upgraded some of the rares to be a bit better. For example, I had upgraded out of Lori's, and I progressed it and pushed it, and I was killing the 83 guards just as fast as I was killing these level 70 guards just now. So, hopefully that gives you a good idea of the strategy and what this looks like in terms of the progression. This is the Firecast leveling, and then you will respec what this character has that you're seeing in game that I just showed you for that first room, that their tree looks like this. You'll notice the respec points are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think, and 9, 10. Those are the swaps we make. It's about 10 passives. You will have these if you've done your quests with respec points for passive points. Like, I don't even think you don't have to go out of your way. You get 10 passives just by doing most of the campaign, I believe. But the point is, the main respecs are you're dropping Elemental Overload, you're dropping this caster wield for the caster wield with some crit, and you're picking up the ailment effect instead of the chance to free shock a knight. The reason for that is it's a better shock, and you're dropping the flip res node because the flip res node doesn't matter when you're an Inquisitor that ignores res. Whew. Hopefully I have explained this quasi well. I don't know if I have, but anyways, that is the start. You Leaguestar Firebase caster, kill the Sanctum with Energy Blade setup, progress your gear, upgrade your gear, and then you will transition to what I'm going to show you next, which is the initial setup for Tri-Stack. Tri-Stack, for example, last league when I did this league start, I don't think I killed Katava. Granted, I could have killed Katava earlier because I was res cap before this, but I waited to kill Katava until I want to say my character was like 90, level 91, 92. It was something like that. I had already bought my Ivory Tower, my Wrathpith, my Balbala, all of my key items I had already purchased. And I went into killing Katava as an absolute demigod, which could have been uber viable at that point because we'd gotten all the gear in Sanctum in about basically at the end of T2, I had enough currency to set this version of the character up. What I'm showing you right now is a Tri-Stack character with Curtain Call. Now, the biggest change that happened to this build overall was simply that Adorn got nerfed. Outside that, the character didn't really get changed. The leveling got a little bit nerfed with the Dark Art change, and that is about it. Hexblast of Contradiction, as far as I know, stayed at 340% effectiveness the entire way through. The only one that got changed was the regular Hexblast for leveling. So ultimately, we can still keep this at level 1 and lose almost no damage. The reason why we have this at level 1 is because it has less reservation costs, so we can have just a little bit of life left over. That's what's going on there. Key piece of information I will let you know right now is if you get to a point where you throw a certain amount of mines and your character can't throw anymore, you are getting soft locked by not having enough reservation space. That is something where you need to fix some of your reservation to make it work. For example, right now I have Curtain Call on this character with 90% reservation. You don't need this initially to set up the character. I have Flesh and Stone, which is a good defensive upgrade, but you could just swap this out for something like Vitality and then not have the 90% reservation, and it should still fit. That is just an example of what you can do. Outside of that, the character is a split personality tree. The split personalities is essentially based on what stats you have on your gear. You want any combination of attributes. Most likely it's going to be Dex with either Int or Dex with Strength, or you can even do Dex with Life or Dex with ES if the other split personalities are just a bit too expensive initially. Double attribute is the best, but you might start out with Dex Life or Dex Int, depending on how it goes. And the reasoning for that is, essentially, even if you have a lot of Dex on your gear, our tree has a lot of Strength, and it has a lot of Int, and only an Anointment for Utmost Swiftness, so Dex is generally a bit lower on our stat line, and we make up for that, and we even it out by having extra Dex on these jewels. Outside of all that, let's give a showcase of what this character looks like. Doing a map real quick. We'll grab a random T17. We'll do a Sanctuary because those are fun, right? Chaos Orbs. I'm going to talk real quick about map mods that you want to avoid with this build. They go as follows. Reduced Aura Effect. You basically have to unspec Ghost Dance or not run it. Because if you click this node with Ghost Dance, it disables your recovery of ES above your evasion. And if you brick all of our flat from Grace, it will brick the evasion. It'll brick your basically how much ES you or how much evasion, how much ES you could recover. I'm freaking getting my words lost. The other nodes I recommend avoiding are less defense because it bricks your damage and bricks your survivability, and Awakener, Seer's ground effect, and Exarch's ground effect. The reason for that is if you step on that ground effect, it temporarily disables your recharge and it soft locks your casting. I think those are the main ones. We'll go ahead and roll over Reduced Aura Effect and see if there's some other obvious ones that would be bad. Area of Effect is just really annoying for clear. It'll be fine for single target. That is up to you if you want to run it. Reduced Crit is, I guess, bad for damage, but it's fine. Bloodstained Saws, I guess, are a little bit annoying. It's whatever. I'm going to roll through some other mods just so I can talk about mods I recommend and don't recommend. Monsters, Free Shock Ignite, that's fine. You're immune to those. All monster damage, Poison. Right now, my character has 20 Chaos Res. This is basically just a gearing problem. My gear is not particularly good. If you look at my gear, I should have Chaos Res. That's a bit better than what I have on my rings, and I should be capping it. If you have capped Chaos Res, I would still recommend grabbing something like the Soul of Shakira pantheon for a map like this, just because the poison mod with all that extra duration can be problematic. But this is a mod you avoid before you have Chaos Res, and then after you have Chaos Res, probably just grab Soul Shakira and it should be fine. Technically, you could also just grab Soul of our Kali with the Chaos Mitigation here, and then grab Soul of this, and then probably be fine, but that is up to you. For the most part, I recommend Brine King or Solaris, but sometimes when you're going to do something where you're going to see a lot of Chaos degen, our Kali can be good. All right, let's go through a bit more map mods, give a bit more examples. Unique Boss Possessed is definitely usually a pretty dangerous mod. Areas have Awakener's Desolation. That is the Cirrus ground effect. Do not run these maps. Whenever you step in the ground effect, you will disable your recharge and soft lock your casting. Curses generally don't matter that much. It's more a matter of, okay, what am I weak to? For example, if you're barely over a res cap, elemental weakness could be dangerous. Right now, our gear is pretty weak, so we're barely over it. Elemental weakness is a bit of a problem. That's up to you. Plan around that. And then gain is extra, probably fine. Just makes it more rippy. Less CDR, doesn't really matter. Aura effect will brick Grace, will brick Ghost Dance. Unstable Tentacle Fields, I think that's the Elder Circles that explode. Boss Life, cannot leech. Players throw fewer mines. This is fine. This is basically a 30% damage loss. That's something that's fine. Reduce block a chance. That's okay. We lose a bit of our spell block. That's okay. For the most part, those mods aren't going to brick anything. Monsters have Suppress. That's just a tank mod. Monsters steal charges. That's just annoying. Monsters have a bunch of extra chaos. That is dangerous unless you get Chaos Res. If I had Chaos Res, this map would probably be fine. Monsters have speed, crit. This is a map where you run Solaris for the crit. And monsters gain chaos. If you have Chaos Res, you're fine. But freaking I don't because it's bad gear. Can't gain charges. That makes your charge trap or charge mind support feel bad, but it would be fine otherwise. Like, you could probably run this and it would be fine. The main problem with this map is it has Searing Exarch runes, which turn off recharge. Basically, what I'm saying is avoid the recharge stuff, avoid less damage, and then figure out what you're okay with, how many times you're okay with dying. If you're playing softcore, you could do some pretty bad map mods and still end up succeeding the run. I'll give you some examples. Initially, T17s, I was doing this exact character. I was doing T17s where you couldn't roll them. I was just running every single map. I don't know how many I ran that first week, 100 plus, whatever it was. I think I failed one map, and it was an abomination that had all. Basically, there's a mod that says remove 10% of life, ES, whatever on hit. And effectively what that means for a low life build is I get one shot every single time I get hit. There was a lot of other rippy mods in there, and I just ran them anyways. And for the most part, we just DPS overpowered the map, even though they were really bad mods. So essentially, it's based on how many times you want to click the Chaos Orb for how many times you want to die in these maps. They're super rippy. It sounds like they're nerfing a lot of the monster HP and monster damage, which might make the mapping a lot more smooth. Generally, the most dangerous part of these maps was just getting to the boss. Like, the boss itself wasn't really too dangerous. I would say Abomination was kind of hard to dodge, and Citadel has some weird, like, stuff that slows you down. I don't know the mechanics of Citadel that well, just because I just don't do Expedition, so I'm not familiar with those boss mechanics. So that's a bit of a skill issue there. That being said, don't run Citadel anyways, because the fragments are bad and the unique is bad. You should run Fortress for the good unique, run Ziggurat for the good fragments and decent unique, or run Sanctuary, which has decent unique and decent fragments. The other one I'm forgetting is Citadel, Fortress, Ziggurat, Abomination. I don't know which one I'm forgetting, to be honest with you. I'm sure the one I'm forgetting is not that important. Oh, well, whatever it is. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned Abomination. Abomination has good fragments, bad unique. And basically, for reference, if I was going to make money, I personally would run Ziggurat and Abomination, mainly because those are the ones that target the Maven fragment, and they have other fragments that are good as well. All right, anyways, this is less AoE, can't gain charge, Searing Ground effect, more monster life, and monsters have chaos. I'm going to do not Searing Exarch ground effect because it just really annoys me. I personally never run the ground effect mods. And then here is what I believe is probably the worst mod you can run, which is players have less defense. This bricks your damage and it bricks your entire HP pool. You will go from 7k ES to 3.6k ES. You will lose half your damage because your damage is based on your ES. And then your HP, your max hit just gets cut in half, along with your evasion getting cut in half. So very bad mod. Do not run it. Okay, anyways. Suppress, cannot block, poison duration, elemental res, gain is fire, crit. This seems like a great mod to run. Got some annoying mods in there. What we're going to do if we're going to run a map like this is quite simply grab Shakira, grab our Kali. This is our chaos mitigation. It'll work okay for poison. And then outside of that, there's just a decent amount of damage mods. Res doesn't matter for Inquisitor. And I'll just give you a showcase of what it looks like doing Sanctuary. I cannot wait for these mods to not be a thing. Holy cow, they're going to nerf the monster HP and we're no longer going to have mandatory Necropolis mods. That's going to feel surreal. That's going to feel crazy. And we'll give a showcase of what this character looks like doing a T17. It is pretty much just you throw mine in front of you and you keep walking forward. Hexblast is fairly good. We just care for Material Conflict. I thought that was like calcification or something. I was trying to read it, but I'm like, well. Anyways, you throw your mines. I have my leveling filter on. Mistakes were made. Anyways, don't look at how much things are on the ground. You throw your mines and you run through. Generally, what I'd recommend, and this is what I was doing on my league start farming currency, is on T17s, they are I think the boss is this way. They are very good currency if you just run in and go straight to the boss. Don't really worry about T17s in terms of trying to farm them for loot. Initially, those fragments are king. There are a lot of very valuable uniques that are necessary for different builds depending on what people are making. For example, slam builds, Uber Shaper. You have Tides of Time, Uber Shaper. You have Maven Flask. You have Impossible Escape. You have Awakened Gems. You have Eater has Nimbus. You have Ravenous Passion for people that want to do the Ragecaster helmet, which now has more spell damage. Should be pretty interesting. You just want to run straight to the boss. You see we got here in about 1 minute, and then you want to go and chuck at your mines at the boss, whatever the mechanics are, play around it. I don't know what mods this guy is doing. Boss's phase, there's an in-between fight. You just throw these down. Kill the boss. This wave phase will not end unless you kill the boss. I don't really see what the boss is doing. Okay, boss is dead. So anyways, that's what it looks like. You will, so we have that minute 46, whatever it was. You run straight to the boss, kill the boss. Those fragments are your money. You can sell the fragments or you can run to Ubers. This is Uber viable for all Ubers. And that's the sort of idea. This is insane currency printing, and that's what I did early this league, was went straight into T17s after doing essentially a bunch of Sanctum running, and that's the Tri-Stacker. The biggest, I think, downgrade outside of Adorn for this character is in comparison to other characters. We got leaked that there will be special new mod crafts specifically for weapons, and I don't believe this works on Energy Blade. The example being is I put an enchant on this, which essentially those special crafts, they look like they're an enchant. And when you go to Energy Blade, you lose the enchant. I don't know if this will change. Maybe it'll work on Energy Blade, but I just want to preface this as the two potential cons for this build is the fact we're going to lose out on that weapon enchant and that we lost Adorn. That being said, we got back Kalandra Mist, we got back our Combinators, and quite frankly, with those two things, you may be able to make stronger builds even without Adorn because of how good you could make a helical with a reflecting mist. The RNG involved and the cost involved is going to be astronomically bad. I don't want to think about it, but the upside is you can make some very min-max characters. Anyways, but this is just the early game. The earliest you swap into it is this sort of setup. I do want to mention one thing specifically. If you look at my character right now, the personalities, I believe these will be probably pretty common because they buff Simulacrum a ton and they made Jewels more common. I think people will be running Simulacrum a decent amount more. You don't need these, you can play without these, but I think they'll be pretty cheap. The thing I do want to mention is Unnatural Instinct, Brandis Pact. These two items could run away in cost. If they do, that is completely fine. You do not need these to play the character. Right now, you'll notice we are at about 1100 strength, 1100 int, 900 dex. Simply put, all you have to do is take out this jewel. That's the Brandis Pact. By the way, it's going to be called something differently. I have a trade search that's set up to look for this specific version of Brandis Pact, or this specific mod. They changed it to be where it looks like that which was taken, but it drops from the King of the Mist, and it's not that which was taken. They changed the name. I forget what it was, but it is going to be in the next league. So you'll see we drop down to 800 dex, 1000 int, 1000 strength, and then you take your Unnatural Instinct, and what you do is you would respec these two nodes, or these three nodes here, grab a cluster, or grab a jewel socket here, and then just do 2 rare jewels instead. The build will be just fine. It's not that much difference in power between these two setups, if I'm being quite honest with you. These are probably the most expensive items in this setup I'm showcasing, but in terms of how much of a difference it makes between two rare jewels in this, it is fairly negligible. You will still be able to do T17s, you'll still be able to do Ubers. Okay, now that I showcased that, let's get back into the guide. I'm going to go over the notes section real quick and try to explain a few more things. Pros and cons, this is basically just the why you should play the build or why you shouldn't play the build. The TLDR is very good money making early, high damage, can do all content. The bad is, don't do mapping on this build. This is made for a Sanctum League start. I'm telling you right now, don't do a mapping plan. This is built around Sanctum. If you're going to take this character and then start doing maps, you need to change some things. You need to add probably Determination instead of running Haste in Sanctum. You probably need to grab Leech instead of some damage nodes. You need to grab some regen. You need to modify it. But I am not going to tell you how to do that because I don't recommend it. I just recommend doing this right here. It's very good, very efficient for early progression. Outside of that, you can do other skills besides Dissipation. You could do Firestorm, Frostful, Ice Nova. Don't recommend it. Penance Brand Dissipation is king. I have leveling VODs right here, which go through my entire run of my character for about 5 hours, where I went to 68. I got all that currency. So if you want to see what it looks like throughout the run, I didn't do a very efficient run. I kind of screwed around a lot, did some stupid things, but those are there for your viewing pleasure. Outside of that, we have a regex, which you basically just use in Act 1, and that's about it. And you can make your own if you want to change this around, but it's made for 3 blue for Combustion, Elemental Prolif, and Magma Orb. Outside of that, these are just the gem links I recommend, and some of the prioritization on gearing is you click Battle Mage as your first node. Whenever you find a decent axe or decent one-hand sword or decent one-hand mace, whatever it is, with some flat fire, flat LE, whatever it is, always keep upgrading that weapon whenever you find a better one. It should help your leveling quite a bit. Carry the fact that you start grabbing some nodes that maybe aren't 100% efficient because they're planned around the respec for the Sanctum swap. How to get chaos early. I described this with you go and buy demo contracts, you run them, do the question mark thing. As for the gearing, very important. I have recommendations here, but the biggest thing I would recommend you do for gearing is you want to highlight. Now, when you're highlighting, I need you to click at the beginning and drag over. Sometimes if you double click this, if you double click it like this, it'll leave off these two the equal signs and it'll brick the copy. So you need to highlight over, Control C. And the way this works is we're using a program called Better Trading. You'll see over on the side here, I have these little folders, and this is the Inquisitor Spellblade buy list. This is just a setup thing for you when you're like, okay, I need to start buying some items. Oh, I haven't gotten Carnage Heart yet. You click the button, it searches it for you. You don't need this, it just makes it a lot easier. I also have a setup, custom weighted sum searches to help you buy very efficiently powerful items that are a lot cheaper, and it's based on the weighted sum search. So the way this works is I attached a custom value based on how valuable I think each of the stats on a ring are that you could get on trade based on, like, say, for example, some guy unveiled a minimum frenzy. That's not something most people will look for, but it has some value, and I attached some value to it based on the power level I thought of these stats. Now, the point is, when you do the search, I have the min sum set, or the minimum weight set to 150. So every single ring that'll pop up here has a minimum weight of 150. You can click the sum to see the highest valuable items, and you'll notice the highest valuable items are helical rings. Helical rings are very good, and my weighted sum does not account for synth implicits, so that's part of the reason why those will pop up. But the idea is, as you upgrade your character, you can just change the weighting at the top, and that will start showcasing better and better items. Essentially, get the best item you can for the price, and that is how you do it. I have a lot of things set up for rings, for boots, for jewels, for shield, for belt. This is just early rare upgrades. Eventually, a lot of these items will be unique, or you'll be making or creating custom items yourself. That's just how you do it. As for getting this folder, you get the Better Trading extension. I don't know if you can get Better Trading on Firefox anymore. You might have to get it on Google Chrome. But anyways, you go to the Import Folder button, copy this here. It should say Inquisitor Spellblade Buy List, 30 saved searches, and there you go. That's how that works. I just set that up so that way your gear progression and the items you're going to buy have hopefully it's pretty straightforward and makes it better for you. I used that myself when I did this league start, and I'm probably going to set up something similar for the build I plan to actually play myself, which is going to be a style of Berserker slams. Okay, I don't know if I've forgotten anything. Hopefully I've gone over all the progression for the most part and it makes some sense to you. I did this because this is probably the best League starter I've ever done in terms of just pure efficiency. It worked the whole way through, got me to a higher gear level faster than most of my other League starts I've done before. And the reason I did that was specifically because I was trying to compete with Fubgun. If you don't know Fubgun, he is an MF warlord of sorts, and quite frankly, I made a bet against him about making money, and I was only planning to play 10 to 12 hour days. I knew he was going to be playing almost double my play time because he's able to degen, and I'm more of a guy that requires sleep. If I don't get my sleep, I'm not going to function well. So anyways, I did this when I went to compete with him, worked really well, and I wanted to update for people that are interested in doing a Sanctum rush and making a lot of currency early. This is how you do it. There aren't a ton of changes. I updated the notes section a bit. I updated the free pathing a little bit. I min-maxed it a little bit more. Last league, I wasn't so sure if I wanted to do the new tornado or some other skills, but this league, I know. By the end of day one, I was very convinced that Penance for Anticipation is just correct, and that's the one I'm recommending, and I hope it treats you well on league start. This is the Tri-Stack Energy Blade Inquisitor from start to finish for your early to early end game. And of course, if you want to min-max it more, there's going to be other things you can go for that I'm not even showcasing here. For example, helical rings with the reflecting mist, eyes of the great wolf, corrupted cyclopean coils, investment. You can min-max this as much as you want, or you can just use it to make a bunch of money early and then swap over to some other build you're excited about. As always, thanks for watching, Exiles. I hope you enjoy. Take care and peace out.